Hello, I beat to Dr. Harold. So in this video, my groupmate Ahmad Mujahid, Sakinah, Siti Syafinaz, and me, Nursyahirah Syamimi, will be presenting our evaluation of two kinds based on reader response criticism for Task 3 oral presentation of our coursework TSLB 3123 Literature in English. Now, I will start off our presentation with the first point of the evaluation of the short story of two kinds based on the reader response criticism, which is the Asian household parents. So, the short story Two Kinds present the readers with the Asian household parent setting, which allow Asian readers to relate more to the story. So as we can see at the beginning of the short story, Jingmei's mother migrated to San Francisco in 1949 from China. Jingmei's mother had come to San Francisco in 1949 after she lost everything in China, which is her mother, her father, her home, her first husband, and her two twin daughters. So after that happened, Jingmei's mother migrated to San Francisco and started her new life and raised Jingmei's in San Francisco. But even though they live in San Francisco, Jingmei's mother is still an Asian parent and she raised Jingmei with the Asian household parents' way. So Asian household parents' way of raising children are actually different with other parents from the other side of the world. For example, American parents. We can actually see and understand how different it is, the way of Asian parents and also the American parents raising the children. So the readers from different background, which is not from the Asian parents' household background, may encounter some problem to relate to the story. Meanwhile, us, as the Asian readers, on the other hand, can actually relate to how Jingmei is raised. So this short story actually represents the Asian household parents, and as the Asian readers, we can actually understand how the short story actually works. Now, I will continue to explain more on how the readers can actually relate to this short story in the point of Asian household parents. So stereotypically, Asian parents praise hard work over anything else. And this can actually be seen in the short story where Jingmei's mother pissed off because she feels like her daughter did not put any effort to be the best. So we're gonna look at the extract from the short story. Jingmei's mother often said things like, just like you, not the best because you're not trying. She also mentioned that only as you be your best for your own sake. So this phrase or this thing actually repeatedly mentioned in the story even after Jingmei has grown up. Her mother still said that you're just not trying. So from Jingmei's mother's perspective or eyes, she feels like her daughter just did not work hard enough. She did not see the effort that her daughter put in anything that she asked her daughter to do, which is why she feels angry and pissed off of how her daughter act. So as the Asian readers, I think most of the Asian readers can actually relate to this point, which where the Asian parents only praise hard work and not anything else. So the Asian uh, people who are raised in the Asian household parents will actually understand on how most of the Asian parents will actually only see the hard work and not anything else that the children put into. Asian parents will always look for hard work and ask us to work hard in order to achieve anything that we want. So Asian parents think that uh, we can achieve anything as long as we work hard. This actually also happened to Jingmei's because her mother think that Jingmei's can be anything as long as she worked hard and put her effort in everything that she do. Now we're going to discuss more details under the point of Asian household parents. So Asian household parents often want the children to have a good future, which is to become someone other than the children are born with. So first we're gonna look at the extract from the short story, which is about Jingmei and her mother. So when Jingmei and her mothers are having conversation, Jingmei mother told her that she can be best anything. She said that you can be best anything. And then the second example is that when Jingmei's mother are having conversation with Auntie Lindo, which is Waverly's mother, she said that if we ask Jingmei wash dish, she hear nothing but music. It's like you can't stop this natural talent, which actually not true. So Jingmei's mother also bring her to beauty training school, and in the story we can also see that Jingmei said that why don't you like me the way I am to her mother. So the thing with Jingmei and also her mother is that Jingmei's mother dream of Jingmei's becoming someone of her dream. So Jingmei's mother want Jingmei to become a person that her mother dream of, which Jingmei's not actually wants to be. So, for example, about when Jingmei's mother are having conversation with Auntie Lindo, she mentioned that Jingmei's actually have a very natural talent in music, which is playing the piano. Where Jingmei's actually not having that natural talent. So Jingmei's herself actually uh, mad when she hear her mother say this because she feels like her mother is training her or turning her to be someone which is not her. So the readers from the Asian household parents, which is the Asian readers, actually can relate a lot to this point because, again, stereotypically, Asian parents always have a dream on how they want their children to be. Asian parents always have a dream on where they can decide whatever they want for how the children wants to be without considering whether the children actually wants it or not. So some parents in the Asian household actually goes to like decide on what field of study the children need to study, what field of work that children can pursue, and even deciding the whole thing for the children life when the fact that the children actually need to have their own freedom because it's their life. So I believe that this point, which is where the Asian household parents often want the children to have a good future in a way of turning their child into somebody else, is actually relatable to most of the Asian readers because most of the Asian parents are like that. Most of Asian parents are actually think of deciding or controlling in a way of their children's life without even considering how the children actually feel, which is actually happening to Jingmei's and also her mother.
So, hello, my name is Siti Syafinaz, and I will continue with the next point. So, in reader response criticism, we can also see that in two kinds, there is a lack of communication between mother and daughter. In the particular short story, we can see that Jingmei and her mother did not have a smooth relationship, whereas they continue to dispute throughout the story and they continue to have a lot of misunderstandings between them. Although Jingmei's mother only wanted the best for her daughter, she did not manage to tell or to help her daughter understand what she's trying to do. Instead, all her plans backfired and her daughter ended up hating everything that she suggested. So this problem is actually due to the fact that the mother and the daughter did not manage to communicate well with one another. If Jingmei and her mother manage to talk smoothly with one another and they continue to tell each other about how they feel, they probably would have a better relationship because they can understand what each of them were trying to do. Her mother was definitely trying to help Jingmei to become a better person in the future due to her past, whereas she doesn't want her daughter to live a horrible life or a miserable life in the future. However, the way she does things is something that her daughter does not manage to understand, and this caused the fight between Jingmei and her mother because Jingmei does not know what her mother is trying to do for her. She doesn't know the sacrifice that her mother made. However, if they manage to talk heart to heart with one another, it could probably lead them to understanding each other better and thus creating a better relationship between them. Okay, so next, as a reader, you can see that both Jingmei and her mother played a very important role in why the relationship between them became so bad. So one of the reason is that Jingmei always blamed her mother for everything, despite the fact that she can make her own choices. Throughout the story, you can really see that Jingmei doesn't have a clear vision of what she wanted to do. She doesn't know what she wants, what she likes, and she doesn't know what she doesn't want to do. Therefore, she ended up following her mother's choices. However, this backfired because once she realized that she cannot do all those things, she ended up giving up and ended up throwing a tantrum towards her mother, which led to saying many mean things to her mother and causes her mother to feel very sad, and she was somewhat disappointed in Jingmei. And the second one, Jingmei's mother, on the other hand, forced her dream on Jingmei. Despite knowing that Jingmei doesn't want to do it, she kept on forcing her to do it. For example, like when she forced Jingmei to learn the piano. Throughout the story, the readers can actually see that Jingmei does not have any interest whatsoever in wanting to learn how to play the piano. However, her mother kept on forcing her, and that led to her eventually um, causing her mother embarrassment during the show, whereas there is this one part where she had to play the piano in front of an audience. And in that particular scene, you can see that she was trying to make sure that her mother does not force her to play the piano in the future because of how bad she was playing during that time. However, that was something that shouldn't have done because it causes a riot between them, and it causes them to become further apart from one another instead of making their relationship better. Okay, so next, the miscommunication eventually led them to having multiple arguments and endless fights. So, throughout the story, you can really see how they continue to have a lot of arguments, and they never really have a time where the two of them show how much they love one another or how much they care one another. So in this particular line, whereas Jingmei shouted, "Then I wish I weren't your daughter. I wish you weren't my mother." This was the time where she eventually burst into anger, and her mother felt the most disappointment for her daughter, which is Jingmei, because she had sacrificed a lot for Jingmei, but instead Jingmei had seen all of it as something that will ruin her life, and therefore she blamed her mother for everything that has been done. However, as a reader, you can really see that her mother was just trying to do her best for her child, and she just wanted Jingmei to live a better life in the future. However, due to the miscommunication and her mother never really tell Jingmei how much she loves her, that causes Jingmei to feel as though her mother is just there to ruin her life. So if only they had managed to tell each other how they truly feel, I think that they personally would had a better relationship, and they would not have endless arguments throughout the story. Instead, it was becoming more and more bad because in towards the end of the story, you can actually see that Jingmei continued to disappoint her mother in multiple ways, and one of them is that she continued to fail in her studies, and I think that eventually led her mother to feel more disappointed in Jingmei and thus gave up on her as a whole. So, if only Jingmei could understand what her mother was trying to do for her, then I think that they would have a much more peaceful relationship.
As the next presenter, I will be discussing on the struggle with self-identity from Jing Mei's perspective. In the beginning of Two Kinds, Jing Mei was as excited as her mother for her to be a prodigy. As she said, "I pictured this prodigy part of me as many different images, and I tried each one on for size," which refers to what kind of prodigy she can be. This is where her struggle with her identity would stem from. As a reader with parents similar to Jing Mei's mother, I can relate to our parents wanting us to be the best at what we do. But if it's not approached in a proper way, it can lead to a horrible mishap in a child's identity and self-esteem, in which we will discuss it further in this presentation. The mishap with Jing Mei occurs after she failed multiple tests her mother put her through, such as memorizing the name of countries and its capitals, memorizing the Bible in 3 minutes, and doing math in her head. She tried and failed and had to view her mother's disappointed face over and over again. She said, "After seeing once again my mother's disappointed face, something inside of me began to die." This sentence truly broke my heart because no child should have to experience something inside of them like their will is dying. She also mentioned how she hated the test, the raised hopes, and failed expectations. So, in this part of the story, her mother's expectation of her began to damage her motivation. The next part describes Jing Mei's concerning behavior, which is unusual for a child. She looked in the mirror and felt seeing herself as a non-prodigy or an ordinary girl as a disappointment and began to cry. But she didn't just cry, she also attempted to scratch out her reflection. Here we can view the harm of pushing a child to reach a certain standard they couldn't begin to comprehend. This is where I also noticed Jingmei wasn't struggling with a common issue of self-esteem, but a serious case of self-identity struggle with probably a hidden psychological issue. With her struggle mentioned in the previous slide, she might have felt helpless with her mother's determination to make her a prodigy. Hence, as a child, her solution would be to throw tantrums and rebel against each and every attempt her mother makes to make her different. And here she just decided to give up because she believed her mother should love her as she is, which is traditionally a Western influence on parenting. Although she was born in America, her mother was a first-generation immigrant and had brought her understanding of parenting from China, which calls for a child to be strictly obedient towards their parents. This part illustrates Jing Mei's confusion of the way she is raised by her mother, leading her to believe her mother is in the wrong for pushing her in the direction of a prodigy. Overall, I believe a reader can relate to Jing Mei's inner struggle with her identity because it is a normal occurrence, especially when we are still in the process of growing up and finding our purpose in life. Self-identity issues may stem from the different beliefs a parent and a child may hold, in this case between the mother and Jingmei. Jingmei's mother had went through a traumatizing event where she had lost her first husband, parents, home, and her twin baby girls. She had come to America for the search of the American dream. Hence, that's why she tries to invent Jingmei's identity as a prodigy. She had lost everything, but hoped to give her daughter the best, in a way she believed is the best way. However, Jingmei believed in being herself without any attempt to make herself a prodigy in playing the piano. She doubted after the multiple failures and looks of disappointment of her on her mother's face. Thus, she fought her mother in every step of the way in making her a prodigy. As a young adult, I believe a parent should communicate with their child if they are facing a crisis in identity at such an early age. They should be heard in order for an earlier intervention to take place before the problem festers itself and leading to the child growing up to be an unmotivated person with self-esteem issues. Hence, Jingmei's issue could have been resolved if they had communicated with one another properly.
Good morning, I bid to Sahiril. So my name is Ahmad bin Kamal, and I will continue with my point. Asian parents' expectation. Okay, so the first one, Amy Tan structures her writing throughout the short story by depicting a conflict between the mother and daughter, conveying the notion of what a parent-child relationship is like. She also portrays Jinmei, the main character, as someone who believes she is not good for anything because of who she is. Therefore, a conflict between Jingmei and her mother is created within the story that leads to more conflicts, as her mother wants her to be someone that is not her. Her mother forces her to become Shirley Temple and learn how to play piano, even though Jingmei herself does not want to, but she had no other choice other than to obey. Moving on to the second point, in Amy Tan's short story Two Kinds, she demonstrates the powerful, harmful effect of a parent's high expectations and how it can be detrimental to one's child. Parents want to give what's best for their kids and will go through any necessary means to obtain that, whether it be through change of environment or change of behavior for the child. Parents blindlessly strive towards that goal without a second thought. Expectations may arise along the way as parents form an idealized idea of what they want for their child. Much to Jingmei's surprise, her mother believes that shaping her into a superstar will grant her the happiness and recognition she deserves. Moving on to the third point. Amy Tan's story Two Kinds also portrays the challenges of Su Yuan Wu, a Chinese immigrant, and her first generation American daughter, Jingmei. Su Yuan Wu wishes for her daughter to be a child prodigy, but Jingmei defies her mother's wishes. Jingmei's mother tries to comprehend the dynamics of life in the new world and blend their old world culture with a new way of life that they don't understand. Jingmei said in the story, "My mother believed you could be anything you wanted to be in America." Amy Tan also proposes to the reader that immigrants see Americans differently, so that is why her mother puts her faith in the future, particularly in Jingmei.